Welcome back to the Wizard Shop. Today we're going to look at this really cool 2001 Chevrolet C5 Corvette.
Car wizard?
What?
That's not a car.
Well, it might as well be. Half of it's on the ground.
That may be.
Yes, we're going to talk about a clutch job. Let's get started. So no guys, what we looked at on the ground was not obviously the entire car. The rest of the car is still on the lift. This is a 2001 Chevy C5 Corvette and it has around 200,000 miles on it. We're doing a clutch job on it, but not necessarily because the clutch went bad, but because the rear main seal and the retainer plate for the seal itself is leaking so bad it's leaked all over the clutch. And we're going to show you guys what all we had to do. And again, this video is not for so much for the gearheads. You guys would be like, Car Wizard, we already know what it has to be done for a clutch on a C5. That's a no-brainer. This really isn't for you guys. This video is for the people that see Corvettes driving by every day and they say, that is such a cool car. But you might change your mind when you see what has to be done just for a rear main seal and a clutch. Let's go take a look. So right now we have one jack supporting the engine. We have another one supporting the front of the car since it's kind of unbalanced right now since the whole rear end is out of it. Really, it doesn't really need it, but that's just there for safety to be sure that nothing crazy happens. This is really crazy, guys. It's just like an empty chamber. I can fit my head all the way down the middle of the car where the torque tube and the transmission, the transaxles are actually right here, and then you got your CV shafts and control arms and everything like that. But right now, half of its guts are over there on the ground. Let's go take a look at it. So here we have the torque tube. It actually sits in the center in the middle of the car. And to give you an idea of where it actually resides, this is the shifter. So your seat is literally right here, right where I'm at. And your gas pedal and clutch and brakes are right here. And here's the shifter. As you can see, it moves the shifter linkage back and forth and all that stuff. There is no clutch inside of here. That's not what's going on. The clutch is behind the engine just like a normal car, but that's where the normal stops. Here we have our release bearing. This is also the hydraulic actuator for the clutch, and it is a brand new one. It's ready to go back in. This whole thing's ready to go back together. We just wanted to show you guys what this looks like before we stab this thing back in. So as you can see on this pressure plate, oil was contaminating the clutch. It was really making a mess. The clutch really wasn't all that bad, but it's soaked in oil. If you squeeze it and rub it, you'll actually have oil on your fingers. Really, we came in here to change this out. This is the rear main seal carrier and a gasket that goes along with it. This is the actual gasket here. As you can see here, it was just pouring oil all over the sides of it and getting on the clutch. This is actually what we came here to do. What we got all this apart is to stop this crazy nasty oil leak. But since it's contaminated the clutch and we're this deep in it, the customer said, while you're there, go ahead and just do the clutch. And I'm glad we did, because it doesn't look very good. So here we have the transaxle, the rear subframe, the control arms, here's the rear shocks, there's our brakes out there, all in one unit. Some people will actually take the subframe out and then the transmission, but we happen to have a forklift in the shop. Was able to put it gingerly under the car and lower the whole unit. It's just way faster. I wouldn't do this on jack stands or something as a whole unit like this. It would be way too heavy.
Car Wizard, do you think they had a little bit of trouble with mice?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of acorns here, but who knows how old those are. It's got 200,000 miles on it. We'll vacuum all that up before we put it back on. You can see down below is the fiberglass leaf spring that goes across from one side to the other. That is your actual spring for the rear end. This thing is very heavy, guys. If you had one or two bolts left and you took them out and it fell on you, it could crush your rib cage. It could really hurt you. If you decide to try to tackle this on your own, you probably want to have some buddies help you, and make sure you have several floor jacks or jack stands or things to keep it kind of safe. Even using a forklift and having a lift, it took 2 or 3 guys to do this safely. I didn't want it to drop, I didn't want anyone to get hurt, and it all went really well. Most clutch jobs on like a 2-wheel drive Ford Ranger or any rear-wheel drive standard orientation transmission and rear end, a clutch job will be $500, $600, $700. This one, depending on what all needs to be done, can get close to $2 grand. And it can exceed that if there's more wrong, but we're gonna be right around that mark on this job. It's not a cheap, quick job. Doing the clutch on this job, the only thing that adds to it is the cost of the clutch itself. It actually is just in here for the rear main seal. But the labor is really not much different, because to get to the rear main seal, you still have to take the clutch apart and take the flywheel off. We're just going to be going back together with new components. That adds extra cost to this job, is the flywheel pressure plate, release bearing, and the clutch disc and everything like that. That's really all that it adds to the cost of this job. It's not really hard, but it's very cumbersome. As you can see, this is not something that you do on your own underneath the car. You could get really hurt. So in order to get to the transaxle, you first have to take off the exhaust, and there's also a cover plate with lots and lots of bolts that comes off, which is down here on the floor, as you can see. This is not a job that you're going to whip out in 1 or 2 hours in an afternoon, and it's going to take you quite a while to do this job. So this thing's been leaking for a little while. It's been leaving drips on the ground, and finally the customer said, it's time to get this taken care of. I know it's not going to be cheap. I just want it done right and have this behind me. He loves this car. He's expressed that to us several times. I think he told us 6 times, I love my car. Hey guys, I love my car. So, okay, we get it. So we got Magic Mike doing this. He's actually pulled this all apart. He's just waiting for us to film it so we can put it back together. Let's take a look under here. As you can see, you have to disconnect the rear brakes. They actually made 2 fittings just for this job, which is right here. We'll have to bleed the brakes in the rear when we go back together to take any air bubbles out of it. Here's our parking brake cables. Here's our exhaust that's just hanging here. This is the rear of the exhaust. That doesn't have to come off. There's all kinds of connectors and wiring. There's an entire harness, as you can see. It's all the way back, just strung back there hanging. Tons and tons of wiring. Here's our fuel filter. Here's our fuel tank. And a bunch of fuel lines and brake lines and things along there. Here's also wiring harness. It's like a flat ribbon as it gets to this point. It goes all the way up to there. Now, as you can see right here, this has a bell housing on it. We did have to take it off to do the rear main seal to get the bolts out. But there is a new rear main seal, a new carrier. There is a new flywheel, pressure plate, clutch disc, everything. All brand new. No more leaks. Nice new clutch. He'll be taken care of for quite some time on this. As you can see here, right at the exhaust manifold, the exhaust had to come off. All those things have to come off to drop down that big, huge transaxle. I'm not going to lower the car and risk having any issues, but I will show you guys the bottom of the car. We're not going to be able to look at the top today. But here's the subframe for the engine. And we can see that it looks like it's had a recent water pump put on it. It's got a nice shiny pulley. That is the LS1 that's in there. It has 350 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque. It's one of the best motors ever made, the LS series of motors. We can go ahead and check these wheels while we're here. Brakes look brand new. Nothing's loose. Check the sway bar. Uh-oh. Hear that, guys? That's a sway bar link. We'll definitely let the customer know about that and see if he'd like to replace those or not before it leaves. So I found that. There's our radiator. It sits slanted in order to fit the height of the radiator without making the car too tall. They slanted it. You can see the fans. Let's go ahead and check the other wheel over here. Nice new brakes. Nothing loose there. Same thing there. It doesn't surprise me that the sway bar links are bad because it's got 200,000 miles on it. So those won't be very costly. It won't add very much to the bill. I imagine the customer will say, yeah, go ahead and do that. So we'll let him know and see what he says. Anytime I have a customer's car on a lift, and it doesn't matter if we're doing a clutch job like this or air conditioning or whatever it might be, I always do a quick check of everything, because if you don't and the customer drives and they notice a noise, they'll be like, why didn't you check that, car wizard? And I'd be like, because you brought it in for a clutch. You didn't tell us to do anything else. But I go ahead and check those things anyway, because sometimes it turns into a sale. They say, yeah, go ahead and do that. It makes a little bit more money for the shop. So I definitely want to make sure while we're there, everything looks good and ready to go. And it doesn't take but 5 or 10 minutes, and it could turn into a sale that could be a couple of $300 more on the bill, which helps us out. So, and it could save the customer some heartache if they're driving and say, wow, I just had it in the shop and now it's making a clunking noise in the front end. We can address this and get it taken care of while it's here. One thing that I find that happens a lot in car repairs is that you get a large item like this fixed, a big issue, and the customer's mind is no longer focused on that. They know that's fixed, that's behind me, and then they start tuning their ears to other things in the car. Well, now it's making a clunking noise. It didn't do that before. Yes, it did do that before, as you can see. The fact is, it's just your mind wasn't focused on that. You were too worried about the oil leak. That happens a lot, guys.
Really? That kind of sounds like the wheel bearings on a War Turtle.
Right. They were all 4 bad, but they were so loud that the loudest one was like the front right. I said, okay, I got that fixed. Wait a minute, it's still making noise. And pretty soon I put it on the lift and checked them, and they were all 4 bad. It's like, wow, that's crazy. War Turtle had to have 4 new wheel bearings, which actually, if you guys have been paying attention, just sold on Cars and Bids. The person who bought War Turtle from me sold it, $4,200. I don't know where it's at now, but good luck with War Turtle. It's a really cool car. I really enjoy working on the LS motors. In a shop that I worked at years ago when I was still working my way up the ladder, becoming a technician, I worked on a lot of Tahoes, Suburbans, Corvettes, Camaros, all kinds of things with either true LS motors or LS-based motors, the Vortec 4.8, 5.3. And I got really good at them, like knock sensors on the Vortec engines. I could have the intake off in 15 minutes, new knock sensors, new harness, and back together in 45 minutes. And I think the job paid 3 or 4 hours or something. I got so good at it because there were so many of them. But they're so easy to work on. I can work on an LS motor with a blindfold on. It's just really that easy to work on. And they're good motors. 200,000 miles, and it does have a rear main seal leaking. It doesn't surprise me. It's 200,000 miles. The rest of the engine is leak-free and running great. It runs super. The interior on this car is pretty good. It's in good shape as well. But like I said, we're not going to lower it down. Oh, and by the way, guys, this guy really loves his car. Just to let you guys know that.
Car Wizard?
Look, Mrs. Wizard,
This looks really awkward.
it's beefy and girthy.
Yes, I do notice.
Yeah. Anyways, for any of you guys that are thinking about buying a Corvette, you don't know much about them, you see the C5 or C6 Corvette and you're like, man, I'd love to have one of those. Just keep in mind that if your clutch ever starts to go out or rear main seal starts leaking, this is what you get to look forward to. This is actually very similar to a Maserati Coupe or Quattroporte with the F1 transmission. If you have to do a clutch on those, same exact scenario as this, almost identical. There are several makes and models of cars out there that use this type of technology to do their clutch, and although it's a pain, you don't do it a whole bunch. It's not like you're going to do it 12 times in the life of the car, so it's not too bad. So thanks for watching. I knew I wanted to show you guys this before it goes back together. For those of you who are pondering a Corvette, like I said, and you just don't know much about them, now you just learned a lot more about them, how girthy and lengthy they are. So,
Car Wizard.
yeah. So if you're curious what kind of tools we use to take this apart, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut of everything sold there, and we appreciate it. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, I really recommend you do that now, because I got a really cool project coming. You guys are gonna freak out. Very expensive. Thanks for watching.